Darwin's Origin of the Species, a biography by Maria Julia Dávalos. His childhood. Charles Robert Darwin was born in Shrewsbury in February in 1809. He recalls having a very happy childhood, although his mother died when he was only 8. He recalls this as saying that this event did not cause him any psychological problems. He enjoyed reading and listening to music. Darwin was considered a normal person that had healthy relationships and had a happy marriage during his life. His two grandfathers were very recognized men, Erasmus Darwin, which was a poet, and Josiah Wedgwood, who was a potter. They both made notable contributions to the Industrial Revolution. His formation. He was raised in an open-minded, accepting, and respectful environment. He was part of the upper middle class. This is said that was an opportunity for him to be exposed to different environments to achieve such amount of knowledge. That is why he attended Shrewsbury School, that was a private boys' school, from 1818 to 1825. He loved collecting natural history specimens. His brother invited him to build a lab at home where they could make experiments with their knowledge in chemistry. This revealed Darwin's fascination for science in nature. He started experimenting and trying to understand change between time, between different chemicals and other things. His university. In 1825, he went to Edinburgh Medical School. He began to study medicine. Because of his knowledge and passion for chemistry, he thought this was going to be his perfect field. At this time, he was only 16. And 2 years later, in 1827, he left medical school because after seeing two very serious surgeries, one about a child and another about a man, he was convinced that this was not his territory and he didn't want to study medicine. At the time, he realized that he have always loved the museum. So he went to a chemistry class and a natural history class taught by two great teachers, Thomas Hope and Robert Jameson. He learned how to stuff animals from a taxidermist who was a freed slave called John Edmondson. Darwin started developing his passion when Robert Grant introduced him into observing soft-bodied marine organisms from the North Sea, and he discovered that the eggs that he was supposedly seeing were in fact larvae. At this time, Grant noticed that Darwin was a very important and intelligent young man who was going to be able to do interesting things and discover other answers to questions that humanity had at the time. So that is when Grant took him to Edinburgh scientific circles so that he would expand his interest in natural history. There, he developed a fascination for sexual and asexual reproduction process and the embryology of invertebrates like mollusks, sponges, and polyps. He was reading at the time Zoonomia, written in 1794 to 96, written by Erasmus Darwin, who was his grandfather, and System of Invertebrate Animals, written in 1801 by Lamarck. He then started having some sense of the transmutation. He never called at this time evolution, but he recorded it as transmutation, which was the transformation of the species into something different or something alike as it was before. Then Darwin had a change of direction. His father was not very happy about this. His family expected for him to be part of the church, which was part of the expectations for a respectable middle-class family. He was at the time part of the elite social and intellectual milices. Henslow, who was a botanic, invited him to evening parties where he could meet some of the eminent men of the university, such as John Herschel and Alexander Humboldt, who later on exchanged knowledge between one another and it was part of the creation of both theories. He recalls that they were, by their writings, very inspirational, especially Humboldt, that always was writing about the travels and all the magic that he could see in America. Other perspectives that were happening at the time, Paley, who was a writer and a scientist who believed in God, presented the theory that the world was so perfect only because it was made by a designer, a really good one, who was called God. In order to graduate, Darwin had to defend these kind of theories and argument about it. But the interesting thing about this is that it also gave him a sense of admiration, because he was able to worship the admiration towards beauty and wonder of the world that Paley had, and that was helpful for him during his journeys to understand and to value the world. The voyages in the Beagle. Henslow offered him a voyage around the world in the HMS Beagle. As Darwin says, this was the most important event of my life. He says this because if it wasn't for this journey, he could have not been able to be recognized as a man, and also because this gave him a sense of what life was and all the knowledge that he had achieved. The second voyage was from December in 1831 to October 1836. They went to several places: Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, Tierra de Fuego, Valparaíso, Chiloé, Galápagos, Tahiti, New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, and ended the journey in the Cape of Good Hope, St. Helena, and Ascension Island. During the journey, he traveled with Fitzroy, who was a geologist. They had a couple of fights according to the theories, but had a good relationship. They nicknamed Darwin Philos, which meant sheep philosopher or flycatcher. During the travel, he made collections of birds, vertebrates, invertebrates, marine organisms, insects, fossils, rock samples, and plants. Especially his plant collection was really good and extensive. It was very well recognized at Cambridge. All of these collections were sent to Cambridge, where he was constantly observing and taking notes about the environment. He was trying to understand the variety of the world. Darwin describes that the travel gave him 3 findings that were very important, and that were the starting point for all of his views. First, the fossils he found at the Patagonia, where he can see that animals that were there of other times were similar to the actual ones that were still existed. Geographical distribution patterns in South America, and the animal life in Galapagos. Even though when he first arrived there, he was not able to see the diversity and profoundize this about how important this was to the theory of evolution. There were several things that impressed Darwin during the travel. First, he was really impressed about the beauty of the rainforest and the different animals he found in America. But a negative impression he had was with the slavery happening in this century around America, especially in Brazil, where people were afraid to be heard and punished for their mistakes. He quotes experience he had where several slaves were asked in front of his owner if they wanted to be free, and they answered no. This really pissed him off because he recognized that they were not able to say yes because they were afraid of the consequences, not because that was their will. He had always been against slavery, and even his family was always presenting campaigns to fight this back at home. After all this travel, there was important information he gained. Geological information and debate gave him more information to create these theories: the age of the earth, the stages of the ground. Afterwards, on working on evolution, he used the same concept of small accumulative changes as the key of the origin of the species. Although he had all of this so clear, he never stopped believing in God. His admiration was even greater every time. He could not conceive that even though there was an explanation for everything that was happening, it was so perfect and admiring that he believed that there was something else, a God or someone, who did this. In 1836, he finished his travel as a changed man, but not yet an evolutionist. Thank you.